Robotic surrogates combine the durability of machines with the grace and beauty of the human form to make your life safer and better.
An idea how a surrogate's head would explode from the inside.
What do the operators say?
Not much. They're dead.
Hi, I'm Nat, he's Matt, and we've got your geek news right here.
And this week we've got a review of the film adaptation of Robert Venditti's 5-part comic miniseries, The Surrogates.
Directed by Jonathan Mostow and starring Bruce Willis as Agent Greer, Surrogates takes a lot of liberties with Venditti's 2005 storyline. But unlike Alan Moore, Venditti's actually pretty excited.
He told Casey and Rudy from A Comic Book Orange that it keeps the themes and subtext of the story, and he was really happy with what they've done.
So go figure. But you know what? Did Venditti's happy-go-lucky willingness to see his story optioned off to Disney make the poignant message of the Surrogates comics suffer in the adaptation?
Yes and no. But first let's take a spoiler-free look at the film itself, and then we'll get into the adaptation of the comic.
And for that, my friend, the gloves come off.
The future world of the surrogates that I created in the graphic novel was very much like modern day, except you just have surrogates.
You can be one place while you're a surrogate, someplace completely different.
Bruce was an FBI agent, but he never leaves his house anymore. His robot's doing all his work for him.
Set less than a decade from today, Surrogates offered us a prologue of an alternate history and a near future that brings about a world where nearly every person in the street is a robot with a human operator at home in their pajamas.
And I don't know about you, but I saw Watchmen this year and I saw District 9 this year, and that's how you elegantly present an alternate history. So right off the top, I found the style kind of weak.
But you know what? I actually got a real kick out of seeing actual news footage from today incorporated into the prologue, especially since the finale of Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, but you know, once we got into the film, the world really opened up, and all of a sudden getting to see how different people's behavior would be once they knew they couldn't get hurt, that was cool.
Yeah, you know what, whether it was jumping 3 stories to get onto a dance floor or a police chase through a junkyard, the recklessness was actually pretty startling.
And you know what, I thought it was very cool to see Greer's interaction with his wife, because she's this character that kind of doesn't want to get out of her surrogate. She's always
happy.
Herself in the surrogate. And Greer kind of, even from the beginning of the film, sees through it and sees the fakeness and sees the fact that it's filtered. And
the issues with, you know, I think you see the issue best with Greer and his wife, because they're living at home as husband and wife, and they like interact with each other like they're on Facebook, right? They never see
Exactly.
face to face. It's through this filtered lifestyle through their surrogates.
And the surrogates look so weird.
Yeah.
They've got this doll-like appearance. It's a visual treatment that really reminds me of the opening of X-Men 3, when they artificially de-aged Xavier and Magneto.
It was crazy. I was really impressed, because initially seeing how many surrogates you see on in a single shot, I thought, well, it must be a makeup job, but
I'm pretty sure it was digital. It felt digital. But the cool thing about it was, in X3, it was distracting because they were supposed to be humans. In this, it was used because they were supposed to be inhuman, and it really worked.
It really worked well. I thought it was really cool. Cantor had many surrogates in this movie, which I found to be a little confusing, actually.
Yeah, James Cromwell's always operating different surrogates because he's the guy that invented them, so he's obviously got access to a lot of them. And that was very confusing. It's one thing to have an operator that looks like their surrogate, and even another thing to have an operator that doesn't look like the surrogate. But when the operator has like
multiple
7
surrogates,
and none of them look like him,
and it doesn't really explain it initially until you see the ending, and then you're like, oh, right, I need to pull those pieces together. Ah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that was a bit disappointing, but, you know, it felt very familiar.
Well, you know what,
this is a popular theme this year.
Definitely. To me, it really had shades of Caprica happening in it.
Yes, you know, it had the filtered life, the hedonism, that it felt similar to that spin-off series that Battlestar Galactica's got coming out. So, yeah.
All in all, the movie wasn't a Matrix. It doesn't give you that kind of mind job, but I love Bruce Willis and was drawn into the story immediately and just sat back and enjoyed a well-made movie with a bit of a preachy message to it.
Now, I, on the other hand, had the comic book bouncing around in my head while I was watching the film.
Which always sucks, yeah.
Yeah, so let's get into the spoilers and let's talk about Surrogates as an adaptation of Venditti's comic book, The Surrogates.
This is Agent Peters. I found Greer. He's been in an accident at Market and Hanover.
The audience is gonna love Bruce because he's so charismatic and so the man.
We did a lot of wire work, a lot of flying around. He's got some great action.
I mentioned earlier that I read the comic book before seeing the movie, which I know always winds up making movies suck a little bit extra.
Which is why I read the comic after we watched the movie.
Lucky.
So let's talk about the huge differences first.
For one, it's obvious that for budgetary reasons, the setting of the film became 2017, which is a lot cheaper and easier to put on screen than 2054 like it was in the comic.
Indeed. So when you compare it to our world, Surrogates had the same cars, same buildings, same clothing, and just slightly cooler technology. Oh, and you know, lifelike robots.
And that made for a drastically different society using the surrogates. One that didn't have the gradual changes of the comics, the riots, the slow integration of police surrogates before the general population started with the vanity surrogates.
The evolution makes sense. Right, on top of that, the plot changes themselves are pretty steep. The character of Steeplejack was essentially replaced with an electric dustbuster that killed the human operators instead of just the surrogates. I mean, sure, it's a movie, it raises the stakes for the viewer, but it's not Vin Diesel's story.
Yeah, the biggest and least palatable change for me was how much crazier the ultimate villain becomes.
There was a real villain!
Yeah, when in the scenario, the surrogates aren't the target. The humans are. The idea that they're addicts and need to be killed, I just didn't
find that compelling. Plus, the Dreads go up from being an essential part of the destruction of the surrogates in the comic to just being a bunch of backward outposts for grungy humans who do nothing important in the film.
Not to mention the idea that the Prophet is a damn robot.
Yeah.
That just screwed it all right up for me.
Totally. And you know what? Like, they didn't do any justice to his character in the comic. Which brings me to the only bad casting in the entire film, Ving Rhames as the Prophet. I mean, sure, cool dude, but definitely too stocky. My vote would have been for Don Cheadle. The likeness.
Crazy.
It's uncanny.
I second that vote, 100%.
Now, you know, in the movie, I actually found the wife to be more compelling than in the comic book, because in the comic series, she doesn't really have that many scenes, and anytime she's in there, she's just really bitching about being old. Which, I mean, everyone goes through, but in the movie, there was a compelling reason why she didn't want to live her real life. She didn't want to be in reality.
They built this story about the
son.
About losing a son, and the wife has this scar on her face.
From a car accident, which is slowly revealed in the movie.
The idea that, you know, the woman just couldn't look herself in the mirror because that scar reminds her of that accident, and that accident took her son away.
The pain of reality is so deep that living this filtered surrogate life just makes her go on.
So that was a spark of very, very good storytelling that happened in the movie that didn't happen in the comic.
Exactly.
But you know what? Ultimately, Cantor operating multiple surrogates at once, that never happens in the comic. In the comic, he's got the one surrogate, he's got the first surrogate, and ultimately, it's just him doing one life. I can't see how...
And it makes it all make sense. That's the thing. There was no confusion about Cantor and the surrogates and whose motivations was where.
And at no point in the movie do they mention that the surrogates do anything but stand still when their operator's away from them, which stands to reason that James Cromwell's character could never convincingly operate the Prophet's character 100% of the time, because he would just be shut down from time to time when he's operating. Like, there was just a plot hole there that I didn't really dig.
No,
I didn't dig it at all.
Make sense. But I've got to admit, with all the changes that happened throughout the film, there was a very elegant solution to making the end result of both stories virtually identical. That was impressive.
That did impress me. As soon as that friggin' dustbuster got connected to the FBI mainframe, I was pretty worried that either the surrogates were not going to be destroyed or that all the operators were going to get killed in the end.
Yeah, that was pretty intense, especially considering who would be left to continue the human race.
Yeah.
Anyway, and since Steeplejack's message is more Tyler Durden than Norman Bates, neither of those would really do.
And plus, letting Greer pull the trigger on the entire surrogate population, that was a nice touch.
Definitely.
I really liked that.
But having his wife live in the end was just weak.
Happy endings are for suckers.
Even though the movie was missing a lot of the details that made the comic special, it did get from point A to point B and carried the same message, even if the messenger was the same.
That's true. And to be honest, I thought the film was really well made. I mean, there were some great performances in it. Bruce Willis is awesome.
He is totally awesome. He always makes me cry. I don't know. Anyway, definitely read the comic afterwards if you haven't already, because as drastically different as they are, both versions of the story are definitely worth your time.
Now, coming up in the next few weeks, we've got Zombieland, Astro Boy, Where the Wild Things Are, and Boondock Saints 2.
Exactly. So keep your eye out for previews and reviews of them on yourgeeknews.com. Bye.
What happens now?
Now it's up to you.